Hi, I'm Jacqueline.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes. And for the first time in like a long time, I'm not the one like hitting record. So I got
Yeah,
the meetings being recorded, and it's so different now.
I told you because it used to be like right in the middle and then now it's
It
like
used to be
way up
huge,
at
and
the
now it's at the
top.
top. So I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, I had some computer issues for a while, so Courtney had to record and send files to me. Um, and now hopefully it's resolved, but we'll see.
Or this will be the lost episode.
But it wasn't too bad. It was just that my computer would only save one combined audio file, which is not great when you have background noise because then you can't cut anything out while the other person is talking. And when you have a toddler, you kind of need to be able to cut out
hmm
sometimes. But she's sleeping, so hopefully we won't need to worry about that. But yeah, it also took me a minute to find out where to record because that has also changed. I'm like, where is this button? Um, I also wish we had recorded like 10 seconds before we did because
hmm
Courtney had her ice cream truck drive by.
And it
It
just
would have
went,
been
hello.
perfect.
It scared the shit out of me.
It would have been a perfect intro.
Oh,
Like, oh,
perfect intro.
you need to run outside right now with your mic and just chase after it until you can get
I
that
know.
recorded and then come back.
Ugh, I'm tempted. They're by here every day, but it's also like 9 p.m. and I'm like, what children are getting ice cream right
Oh,
now?
that's very late for an ice cream truck.
It
That
runs
makes
at the
me
weirdest
uncomfortable.
times. It'll run super late or like almost like, which I guess it's summer now. So I guess school's not really in, but it feels like it runs
Yeah.
like at a time where children wouldn't necessarily be around. But
Yeah. I mean, at least I don't know, it's kind of getting dark at this point. Like I feel like the sun still needs to be up. Like maybe like 8:45 is like okay, but like
yeah,
it's kind of getting where it's a little dark, a little sketchy to be driving around an ice
yeah,
cream truck in the dark.
yeah, a little bit. Um, this is like not interesting at all, but I have the biggest bruise on my leg, and I have no idea where it's from. Pause, please. Let me show you. I'm gonna mute myself just in case this is one thing, but
Oh my God. You were not kidding when you said huge. Like my God.
it's huge. Like it hurts really bad. Like if I
It
graze
looks
it, it hurts.
painful.
Yeah,
Is it from the
no
wedding?
clue. Probably.
That I could just see some
Well,
drinks and some dancing and some bumping and
yeah,
grinding.
it's just weird because I don't remember because I do remember we were taking they had like a photo booth and we were taking a picture.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, "Ooh, I'm falling," but I was falling forward, and Alicia thought I was falling backwards. So she tried to
Yeah.
like put her hand on me, but she accidentally plummeted me forward, but I fell to the left.
She just shoved you down.
Yeah, she accidentally shoved me down. She was like, "I got you," like trying to like think I was falling backwards to hold me up, and she just tipped me right
She
over.
just like, nope.
Um, but I fell on my left side, so I'm like, "Where's this
Yeah.
bruise from?" But it hurts like if I accidentally hit it. It's huge.
Yeah, it's very big. It's very
It's
dark
like
too. Like it
the
looks
size of like a
painful.
lemon.
Yeah. It's ginormous. Like I said, you were not kidding when you said huge. I was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's pretty
It's
big.
huge. It's huge.
I'm just
But
thinking
yeah,
how this
that's
audio could be cut and taken out of context. But
probably.
Yeah, so we just recorded 2 days ago
Yeah.
for our last episode because last week life got crazy. So we're on our normal schedule now, but I don't think we've had any updates in the last 48 hours that I'm aware of.
Not that I'm aware of. I'm sure there are some out there somewhere, but not in this brain hole.
Yep, I mean,
All right, so we'll go ahead and get started on this episode.
we don't
Our
mind our nonsense when it actually goes somewhere, but I guess if there's
yeah,
nowhere to go, it's like we might as well just get into the story and have a shorter
yeah,
episode.
basically.
I'm sure y'all appreciate that.
Maybe we'll make up for it at the end. Maybe not. Who knows? But
Get warmed up and then we'll come up with other stuff we have to say.
so our sources this week are a BuzzFeed Unsolved episode, season 1, episode 9, The Mysterious Disappearance of the Sodder Children, a Smithsonian Magazine article, and a HuffPost article. On Christmas Eve, 1945, George and Jennie Sodder woke up around 1 a.m. to their house in Fayetteville, West Virginia, on fire. They had an older son who was away in the army and 9 other children who lived at home with them at the time of the fire. They were able to escape with 4 of their children, but the other 5 children did not get out. Their remains were never found, and the Sodder family questions if those 5 children really died in the fire. So George Sodder was born Giorgio so Sodu. I'm sorry if that's wrong. Sadu. Anyway, sorry. In Tula, Sardinia in 1895 and immigrated to the US in 1908 at 13 years old. And his older brother brought him to Ellis Island before returning to Italy and leaving George alone in a new country. So you're just like 13 and you're like, hi, I'm here. Cool.
Yeah, here you
What's
are in a
up?
brand new country where you probably don't know much about anything and you're 13 years old and good luck
Yeah.
surviving.
So he started working for the Pennsylvania railroads and carrying water and supplies to laborers. And after a few years, he moved to Smithers, West Virginia, and he started working as a driver and then eventually started his own trucking company, hauling dirt for construction and then later freight and coal. So one day he went to a store called the Music Box and met the owner's daughter, Jennie Cipriani. Cipriani? Again, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, the people of Italy. I'm so sorry.
We are not Italian and we tried to look them up and I could not find a good source for
I'm only 3% Italian, so it doesn't even count. um, but Jennie's family was also Italian, and she moved to the US when she was 3. So George and Jennie married and had 10 children together between 1923 and 1943, which is a lot of children in a 20-year span. You
Yes.
you constantly had 2 under 2, I assume.
Yeah, and we'll get to their ages in a minute, but like there were no twins, so like 10
Yeah,
pregnancies in that time. Yeah.
yeah. And they eventually settled in Fayetteville, West Virginia, and the Sodders were a well-respected middle-class family. So when the Sodder family home caught on fire on December 24th, 1945 at around 1 a.m., George and Jennie escaped with their 2-year-old daughter, Sylvia, 17-year-old Marion, 23-year-old John, and 16-year-old George Jr. And then 14-year-old Maurice, 12-year-old Martha, 9-year-old Lewis, 8-year-old Jennie, and 5-year-old Betty shared 2 bedrooms upstairs and did not get out of the home. So George broke a window trying to enter and cut his arm, and he was unable to get to his children. He went back into the house, but the staircase was on fire, so obviously he couldn't go up there. He went outside to get his ladder so he could enter from the outside of the home, but his ladder was missing from where he normally kept it. So he's like, I'm sure just like devastated because you're like,
Yeah,
I'm trying everything here and nothing is working.
exactly.
George also had 2 trucks, so he decided to pull one of them up to the house so he could stand on top of it and get into the house. However, neither of his 2 trucks would start, despite not having any issues with them the day before. He tried scooping water from a rain barrel onto the house, but it was frozen solid because, again, it's December 24th in West Virginia. It's pretty cold.
Yeah. And again, this man is just literally trying everything he possibly can to get to his 5 children that are upstairs. And like, it's just, there's an obstacle at every single turn. Like, I just cannot imagine like that
Hmm.
feeling.
Yeah. And Marion ran to the neighbor's house to call the fire department, but the operator didn't answer. Another neighbor tried calling as well and couldn't get a response. And that neighbor ended up driving into town and finding the fire chief in person. Because again, long before 911, so you just had to literally call and try to get somebody.
Yeah. And she's like, this isn't working. I'm just going to go drive and find him myself.
Yeah. So a phone tree was started to reach the other firefighters in town, and despite the fire station only being 2.5 miles from the Sodder home, they didn't reach the house until 8 a.m., which is 7 hours after the fire started. Even if you walked like the slowest pace possible, it should not take you 7 hours to get there.
Exactly. Like you could like slither there in quicker than 7 hours.
Yeah. So the house had burned to ash by that point, and the Sodders and firefighters searched the ashes for the remains of the 5 missing children, but they were never found. They were presumed dead, and the fire chief, F.J. Morris, said it may have been so hot that the fire completely cremated the bones. But this is unusual because at least some bone fragments usually remain, and there were also no reports of smelling burning flesh, which would have been common with the remains of 5 individuals being burned inside the home. And typically, like when bones are cremated, that is at a very, very concentrated, high level fire that's not really
Hmm.
common with like a house fire,
Yeah,
especially in winter. I feel like also because you have the outside sources, like obviously it's not putting out the fire, but it's not like 110 degrees outside and just helping it ramp up.
exactly. And we'll get into that a little bit more as far as like the degree and like the cremation and everything, but just five individuals. Like one would
And not a
be
single thing.
exactly like one would be odd enough where it's like, okay, like maybe it just did happen to like burn everything, but you're telling me out of five different people, nothing was left.
Yeah.
But again, we'll get more into that in a little bit.
Yes. So, a jury for the coroner's office determined that the cause of the fire was faulty electrical wiring, but this could have also maybe come from a state police inspector. Sources differ on who determined that. I didn't really know a jury will just come in for that.
Right? Like you're just like unqualified and you just have a group of people that's
You
like,
just have
yep,
like the local
sounds good.
butcher, the
Yeah.
local, I don't know, farmer, and they're like, yeah, faulty wiring, 100%,
Looks like
100%.
electrical to me. So yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know if that's like a something that they kind of like verify. Like maybe it was like the state police inspector was like, oh, this, which also like a police inspector, not like a fire person who like is
Did they even
trained.
have
I
those
don't
back then?
know.
Because I mean, I know it's not that far ago, but also it's like I feel like you still even have fire investigators today who don't really, it's kind of like
Yeah,
guesswork. So in 1945, I'm like, eh.
that's true, which also makes me think maybe we should do a Patreon episode on like arson investigation, like what that like
Ooh, yeah.
looks like as like a forensic practice of like how you're able to tell different things. I think that would be super
Hmm.
interesting. Let us know if you agree. But so yeah, I'm not really sure who came up with this like determination, but it also sounds
You
like
would think the fire chief would have maybe a little bit of insight,
yeah.
especially in like a small town kind of thing, but
But I mean, we
weird.
also know that, like the coroner's office, like you just have like a group of random people who can be
I
elected
mean,
to
yeah, even today, the coroner can be
exactly.
elected. So yeah, you're just kind of hoping for the best.
Yeah. But that'll come back up in a minute. So,
Yeah. So the basement was the only part of the house that remained after the devastating fire, and George covered the basement with 5 feet of dirt to preserve it as a memorial to his children. They also planted flowers in front of where their home once stood, and death certificates were issued for the five missing children days later, with the cause of death being attributed to fire or suffocation. But George and Jenny began to suspect that their children were not dead and that the fire had been set to deliberately kidnap them. So there were many things in this fire that did not add up. I'm sure you kind of picked up on that as we were saying everything that happened, like George's ladder being moved, neither of his trucks starting, firefighters not getting to the home until 7 hours after the fire started. And they were contacted. I think also probably the people not answering in general when
yeah.
people were calling. So a lot of just like odd things happening.
And for like every single one of those to happen in like one
Yeah.
situation is like, okay, there's circumstantial, no,
Hmm.
there's,
Coincidences?
yes, there's coincidental, and then there's just like, I was like, I could like see it, and I was like, it's not, it's
Yeah.
almost there. And then there's just like downright like
Hmm.
bizarre. And yeah,
Yeah. So George Sodder had also had the wiring in his home checked earlier that fall, and it was determined to be in working order. However, a laborer had come to his house around that time looking for work and pointed to two separate fuse boxes and said that would start a fire someday. It was also reported that in the fall, a life insurance salesman came to the house to try to sell the Sodders a policy and got very angry when George declined. And he supposedly told him, quote, "Your goddamn house is going to go up in smoke and your children are going to be destroyed. You're going to be paying for your dirty remarks about Mussolini." So these Sodders were part of a small but engaged Italian community in West Virginia, and George did not like Mussolini and publicly criticized him, which caused some problems in the Italian immigrant community because, you know, people had their thoughts and feelings about it. And he was also very opinionated and vocal about those opinions. And George also never revealed why he left Italy, which led some to believe that he was maybe involved with some kind of shady business there. And people wondered if either of these reasons could have led someone to set the house on fire and kidnap the children. And two of the surviving children also saw a man watching the missing children walking home from school a few days before the fire.
So at 12:30 a.m., less than an hour before the fire began, the phone in the Sodder home rang and Jennie got out of bed to answer it. So on the other end, there was like an unfamiliar voice that asked for an unfamiliar name. And then she heard like laughing and glasses clinking in the background and told them it was a wrong number. When Jennie went back to bed, she noticed that the lights were on downstairs and she heard a loud bang on the roof and what sounded like something like rolling, like when you like drop something and then it's like rolling down the roof. It was also questioned why the lights would be on if the cause of the fire was faulty wiring. So, like, basically, everything I read was like, oh, like she wouldn't have seen the lights on if faulty wiring was the cause of the fire. But I'm like, but that was at like 12:30. Like, could it not have like?
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, I'm like, I feel like it would happen simultaneously of like some kind of explosion and like the lights go out and like the fire starts at the same time. Not that like the lights would be
Yeah.
out for a long time prior to the fire starting. So that didn't really make
It
sense
would
to
kind of
me.
be like a spark kind of thing happening.
Yeah.
So then the lights would go out at the same time as like that
That's what I
happening.
pictured too, which like obviously I'm no electrician, but I was like, I don't see how that's like a damning piece of evidence
Mm-hmm.
personally. So Jennie turned the lights off, locked the front door, closed the curtains, and went back to bed, where she was awoken shortly by the fire. But when she went to bed, her oldest daughter, Marion, was asleep on the couch, and she assumed the five middle children were asleep in their bedroom upstairs. So, like, Marion and those five children had been like playing, they were opening some gifts, I think, that Marion had gotten them for Christmas, like prior to Jennie going to bed. And then, like, when she got back up in the middle of the night, like, Marion was asleep, so she assumed the five children had gone up to sleep between the time she originally went to bed and that time.
Mm-hmm.
Their 23 and 16-year-old sons who escaped with them were asleep in their bedrooms, and their 2-year-old was sleeping in George and Jennie's bedroom with them. So the family and neighbors also reported seeing lights on in the home while the fire was still going, which to me that one makes a little bit more sense for the faulty wiring. They're like, if that was the case, like why would lights still be on? But it
Mm-hmm.
also could maybe be like lights on in a certain part of the house and it was a different part of the house where the fire originated. Um, and a witness to the fire said he saw a man leaving holding a block and tackle, which could be used for removing car engines. So they're like, did someone remove George's engine? And that's why he wasn't able to start his trucks. When the family returned to what was left of the home to search it, Sylvia found a hard rubber object in the basement that was believed to be a napalm pineapple bomb that could have been the rolling sound that Jennie heard on the roof. So they're thinking that's what that object was. Now, Jennie started investigating on her own and burning different types of animal bones, and there was always some kind of fragments left behind. She also spoke to crematorium workers who said bones would still remain even after bodies were burned at 2,000 degrees for 2 hours. So, like we talked about in the beginning, like this is a much, much higher
Mm-hmm.
burning. And even with that, during a cremation, you can still have bone fragments left behind. Again, especially with five different bodies. Like,
Yeah.
and the Sodder home only burned for 45 minutes. And like Courtney said too, it is outside in December. So like it's not going to be reaching 2,000 degrees and again, only 45 minutes of burning. And that's enough
Yeah, because
to
like a crematorium is like a controlled,
exactly.
tiny space that
Yeah.
can get up to again 2000 degrees.
Yeah.
Versus obviously this fire is hot, but it's like cold outside. If your water is
Mm-hmm.
frozen, it can't be
Mm-hmm.
like amping it up.
Yeah. Yeah. And there were also remains of household appliances found in the rubble. In the rubble. That's the right word. There were just gonna leave that in, that's fine. So like, well, it would be unusual to like have evidence of like these household appliances, but not a single fragment of five bodies. A telephone repairman also told the Sodders that their phone lines had been cut, not burned. They're like, that indicates that someone had intentionally
Hmm.
done this. There have also been many reported sightings of the missing Sodder children over the years. And again, a lot of this could just be lore, could be people wanting to be involved, but we're going to discuss them anyway. So, one woman reported seeing the children in a car while the house was still burning, so like driving away from the fire. Again, in that first like 45 minutes, because it didn't take long for the house to burn. The next morning, 50 miles west of the home, a woman working at a tourist stop said she served them breakfast and that there was a car with a Florida license plate in the parking lot. Another woman who worked at a hotel in Charleston reported seeing four of the five children the week after the fire. She said they were with two women and two men, all of whom were Italian, and she said that she tried to speak to the children, but the man who was with them was very hostile and like wouldn't let her talk to them. And they checked in around midnight and then left the hotel very early the next morning. So clearly did not want to be seen or spoken to.
Hmm.
2 years after the fire, the Sodder family tried to involve the FBI, but the Fayetteville Police Department and Fire Department declined their help. The Sodders then hired private investigator C.C. Tinsley to assist them. So Tinsley found that a member of the coroner's jury, who again was part of this determining that the fire was an accident from faulty wiring, was the insurance salesman who had threatened George and his family just months before the fire. So,
Interesting. Okay.
yeah.
Little conflict of interest
A
there.
little bit, a little bit. Tinsley also interviewed townspeople and heard a rumor from the minister that the fire chief told people he'd found a heart in the home and buried it, supposedly to provide closure to the family. So Tinsley started digging where the minister heard this heart was found, or where it was buried, and he found a cow liver that was determined to have never been in a fire. So
Okay.
and this also doesn't really make sense because the fire chief claimed that he did this because he's like, oh, I had this proof that their children were dead, so I wanted to like bury it to give them the closure that like their
Mhm.
children were gone. But he never told the Sodder family this. So
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not
so
sure
weird.
what closure that's providing them if they don't have that knowledge. So
Yeah.
in August of 1949, the Sodders hired pathologist Oscar B. Hunter to analyze the dirt in the basement of what remained of the Sodder home. So, four shards of human vertebrae were found and sent to the Smithsonian for testing. So, they determined that the shards were from a 16 to 17-year-old person, but the oldest missing Sodder child was only 14 years old, which the article did say that, like, it would be unlikely to be from a boy of 14, but not impossible because that's just a couple of year difference. Like it went into like what the specific bone was that is like fully
Yeah.
formed between that age. So they're like, it's not impossible. Because when I read that, I was like, well, to me, that's not very like, confirming because it's just a couple of years. But they're like, it would be unlikely, but it is possible that it could be as young as 14.
Yeah. A lot of times, like with like bone remains like this, they try to give an age range and not be like
Yeah,
15 because you have no idea
exactly.
you don't know if that person has some kind of disability that like hinders their, you know, development, all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Like it's kind of hard to say.
Yeah, like there's a big difference between like, oh, like he was 14 and the bones were like 16 to 17, and like he was 55 and the bones were like 16 to 17. Like
Yeah,
that would be more,
exactly. Exactly.
um, but even more importantly, there was no evidence that those bone shards had ever been exposed to a fire. So that's a pretty big indicator. So they think that those shards likely originated from the dirt that was used to build the basement, not from something that was like previously in the house. Because if you remember, George like flattened out where the basement was and like poured dirt
Hmm.
on top of it. So they think that like those bone fragments were like in that dirt.
Hmm.
Those bone fragments were supposedly given back to George, but their whereabouts are unknown, so that's why they've never been able to like do DNA testing on them in recent years because we don't know where they are today. The Sodder case was eventually declared closed by the West Virginia governor, and the Sodders then purchased a billboard on Route 16 with photos of their missing children, asking what happened to them. And that billboard remained there for 40 years, which is wild to me.
That is wild.
And just so sad that for 40 years
Hmm.
you're paying to have this billboard up to find out what happened to your five children.
Yeah.
The Sodders also passed out flyers offering a $5,000 reward for information leading them to their children, and they then increased the amount to $10,000. And again, this is in the 40s. Like, this is a lot of money.
A lot of money.
The five missing Sodder children were also not heard screaming from their upstairs bedroom during the fire, leading some to believe that they were not there when the fire started because, again, five different individuals burning in an upstairs fire while the whole family's outside trying to get to them. You think you would hear something like,
And you think they would be trying to like break windows, like jump
yeah,
out, like one of them waking up trying to do something.
exactly. Like, I can see maybe if it was just one and they're like, oh, like they just suffocated from the smoke, like in their sleep. But from all five, I just can't believe that like none of them woke up and responded, you know?
Especially because either suffocation or like burning to death is not a quick
Yeah,
thing. It wouldn't happen
exactly.
immediately.
Yeah.
So,
And some do speculate that someone who knew the Sodder children kidnapped them prior to the fire and like told them they were going to set the house on fire. So that's why they went like so quickly and easily, versus like putting up a fight because there's five of them. Who knows how many people would have kidnapped them? But if they're like threatening to set the house on fire, they're like, okay, like we'll just go. Some believe that the mafia was involved and that the children were sold to an orphanage in Italy. And many people wrote to the Sodders over the years with various sightings of the children, and George investigated all of them and traveled all over the country trying to find his children. He once saw a newspaper photo of a family in New York with a daughter who looked like one of his, and he tracked them down, but her parents would not let George speak to her, which I can understand if like that wasn't her and they're like, you seem like this
yeah.
crazy man who's gonna come steal my child, so I don't think I'm gonna let you
Yeah.
see her. Um, they also received a letter from a woman in St. Louis saying the oldest daughter, Martha, was there in a convent. And another letter came from Texas saying that a bar patron was overheard talking about a long ago Christmas Eve fire in West Virginia. Someone in Florida also claimed that the children were living with Jenny's relatives there. So they just have people from all over the country. Again, who knows if any of these have any legitimacy, but
Which is crazy to me. Like, this is before social media, before the news cycle, that like all these people are hearing about it and
yeah,
like writing in about it. Like, that's
yeah,
crazy. Like, the word of mouth, like, spreading.
that is true. Yeah, that is very true. In 1968, so more than 20 years after the fire, a photo was sent to Jenny with no return address, but it was postmarked from Kentucky. And the photo was of a man in his like mid 20s, and it resembled Lewis Sodder, who had been 9 years old at the time of the fire. So there was a note on the back that said, Lewis Sodder, I love brother Frankie, little boys, A91, A90132 or 35. Very interesting message. Um,
Hmm.
the Sodders hired a PI to go to Kentucky and track down this man, but the PI disappeared and they never heard from him again. So the Sodders did not have a son named Frankie, but Jenny did have a brother named Frankie, and Frankie lived in Florida. So if you remember, there were some rumors that the children were living with Jenny's relatives in Florida. There was also the woman at the tour stop who saw the car with Florida license plate the morning after the fire. And Frank, Jenny's brother, also had a son named Frank. So he was probably around Lewis's age. So if you if this is true that like it's Jenny's family and he has a son and then also his nephew that they would be
Hmm.
raised as brothers, just some
Yeah.
theories that are out there. George Sodder died in 1969 at the age of 74, and Jenny died in 1989 at the age of 85. Sylvia, who was only 2 years old when she escaped the fire, is still alive today and does not believe that her siblings died in the house fire in 1945. And that is the very, very bizarre disappearance of the five Sodder children.
Which I'm also like, if you're having all these rumors that your family has your children, why don't you just go down to Florida and check?
Yeah, and then maybe they did. 'Cause I mean, they do say that George
Yeah.
went like everywhere, so like maybe that was checked out. But again, it's just part of the lore to be like, oh, this could be a
Yeah.
possibility, and
That's the
it's
only reason
hard.
I'm like, I don't know about that one because I'm like, if that's your family, I feel like your kids could probably easily, because they were old enough they could remember
Yeah,
having different parents. It wasn't like the 2-year-old who could then be raised,
exactly,
like they were old enough to know who their parents were.
exactly.
So and the fact that there's five of them, it'd have to take so many people to like actually kidnap these kids.
Yeah,
And like,
that's why.
I
Like I
don't
read that.
believe they died in the fire, but I just don't know if I believe that they lived long after they were taken because
Yeah,
why would you, what would have had to have been done to you to make you like not want to go back to your family?
exactly. Yeah, like I read a whole like Reddit thread on theories and thoughts and ideas and everything. Like that was a common theme of like, okay, things are weird, seeming like maybe they were not in that fire, but also I don't think they lived their entire lives without ever reaching out to their family or their siblings. Again, like you said, especially with the ages that they were. It's not like they could have been tricked into thinking that that was their family of origin all along. So some people speculated like, oh, like maybe they were like threatened so badly that they like would never, reach out to their family. Again, going back to the mafia connection, like some people are like maybe they're not even in this country and like they're, a part of the
Or
mafia.
if their father was very anti-Mussolini and they were kind of being recruited to
Yeah,
pro-Mussolini and not agreeing with what
that's
their
true.
father said, that could be a reason they wouldn't want to reach back out to their family.
Hmm.
I still think it would be crazy once you turn 18 to still be like,
Yeah.
where am I? And like trying to get all new
Especially with
identification and stuff. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Especially with there being multiple children. Like maybe if it was just one and like I mean, we
Hmm.
obviously know like people can be brainwashed very easily, but the chances of like reaching all five of them and keeping them under that control for their entire lives. Another theory which I found really interesting was basically just talking about how poor like the investigation was, and it was like, were their remains really there and they just didn't know what to look for? And they're like,
That could happen.
could it have been such a minuscule thing that like because of the time and their lack of training in this small town. Clearly, there's no like fire investigator or anything like that. The coroner's
Thinking a
jury
cow
of
liver is a
who knows
heart.
exactly. So it's like, were their remains really there? And they just weren't easily identified. And then George poured all the dirt on top, creating that memorial, and then kind of further complicating the issue if they were there all along. I thought that had some weight to it too.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's
just
hard for me to believe these five children then lived their whole lives and never, not a single one of the five was like, maybe I should just tell one of my siblings I'm not dead,
yeah, exactly.
So just kind of wild, but a wild case for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Let us know your thoughts on this one. But yeah, I've heard this one, many times and thought it would be a good one to cover. And definitely let us know your thoughts. Do you have other theories that you guys have heard or any of the common theories that are, you feel very strongly about?
Hmm.
Let us know. And with that being said, Courtney, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is we kind of hinted at it at the beginning of the episode with my big bruise is that two of our best friends got married this weekend. So
Hmm.
congrats to Alex and Alyssa because I know Alyssa usually listens. So um we got to attend their wedding, kind of help them kind of get set up the best we can. They did most of the legwork, but we were just trying to be there, like put something in my hand and point me in a direction, please. I will
Right.
help you.
Let me be
But
your servant today. What do you
yep,
need?
literally, like, what do you need? Do you need a drink? Do you need food? What do you need? I will give you anything you want. So it was a beautiful day. It ended up being absolutely gorgeous weather, just really perfect. It was a perfect day. They had such a beautiful ceremony, a beautiful
Hmm.
reception. It was just amazing, and it's so fun to get to celebrate your friends like that. And
Yeah.
they're on their way to their honeymoon, and I hope they have an amazing time. And yeah, so that's my perk of the week is just it was a great day.
Yeah,
So,
that's super nice. It's always nice to celebrate people, and weddings are always just so much fun in general and all that good stuff.
yes. Yeah, so that is my perk of the week. Jacqueline, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week, the last like 3 weeks have just been insanely busy. Like I feel like we've had something going on every single day. And this past weekend we didn't have any plans somehow. So we decided to do a little like family day in the mountains. So like just the three of us, we went up and
You
played
didn't
in the
have any
water.
plans, so you decided to make plans.
Well, it's kind of hard too with like a 3-year-old. So it's like, oh, we would love
Yeah,
to just sit at the house and do nothing all day, but then she
but
gets
then you're
bored. And then so we're
yeah.
all, so it's
Yeah.
like, okay, we'll just go somewhere and do something relaxing. Um, so we just went to the mountains and we played in the water. And by that, I mean, we stood in the water and Millie just threw rocks for an hour straight. And like, it was funny because like Andrew would like he was picking up all the rocks for her and like he was trying to skip some of them and then she would just like one after the other just like plunk them in like wasn't even looking half the time was just boom boom boom, can I have another rock, boom boom, can I have another rock? Like was happy as could be. Like,
Yeah. It's the little
so
things in life.
exactly. So we did that for like probably like an hour and then we're like, this water really cold. Like I don't know how long we should like be in this long term. Like maybe we should get out and warm up a little bit.
Hmm.
Like so then we had a little picnic and then went for a little walk and had to stop and get ice cream on the way home, of course, because It's what you do.
Just girly things.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it was just a very nice, relaxing day. And then we came back and Angel grilled out burgers, which I feel like there's nothing better than like a summer evening eating like a grilled burger on the back deck when like the sun's setting and it's just like warm. And it's
I'm
just,
just
I have
laughing
my,
at all your hand motions.
I'm just still fully in that moment. I
Yeah.
had to stop and get my Heineken 00 so I could enjoy a beer with my burger on the deck because like that's how it needs to go. But yeah, it was just a very nice and relaxing day. And then Sunday we ended up just staying at home and doing nothing. So it was a good balance of like
Hmm.
and a peaceful outing and then a peaceful in
Inning.
inning. Yeah. So after we recorded on Sunday, because again, we just recorded 2 days ago because this week was crazy. Andrew took Millie to Target and Sam's Club, so I got to have like an hour and a half in the house by myself, which is always wonderful.
Just
So
nice. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, that was my perk of the week. Let us know your perks of the week. What weddings did you guys go to? It's June, so it's prime wedding season, so I'm sure
Hmm.
someone is going to a wedding. What else are you doing? Do you also enjoy a burger on a summer evening on a deck? You know? Okay, let's
So
just wrap up this
specific.
episode.
That's so specific.
Is it though? Because like it just feels like a universal experience, is it
I
not?
mean, I don't have a back deck or a grill, so I can't really fully relate.
Well, like
But
you grew up with like a deck and a grill,
yeah,
so I mean,
no,
like you lived that life before. So, like,
I have. I do like things on a grill. I love chicken on a grill. Chicken on a grill is
yeah.
probably one of my favorites, but
We also had grilled zucchini and corn, so it was just anyway.
chef's kiss.
We are on all the places. You guys know where to find us. We're in the show notes. We are also on patreon.com/caffeinated crimes, where again we went to CrimeCon just a little over a week ago somehow. It has only been a little over a week since CrimeCon. But we gave you guys a lovely little recap. We have a pretty good June bonus coming up. All kinds of bonuses. We're at like 40 something at this point. We have a Discord. You can chat with us. We have pins, we have stickers, we have lots. We just restocked. So like we're ready
Hmm.
to go. We're ready to send them out. Come hang out with us.
Yeah, we would absolutely love that. And if you could give us 5 stars on any platform that you can give stars on, so Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anything like that, like and subscribe on YouTube. And in the meantime, go have a cup of coffee.
And don't commit a crime.